Welcome to the Douglas Robbins Show, where we question the noise, chase the truth, and explore what it means to be human in a fractured world. This is where real stories and real conversations rise above the static. Now let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome to the show today. As you can see my shirt if you're on YouTube or on a video, we the people are pissed off. And we're pissed off because we've been misdirected for many years, and more recently, a lot of misinformation, propaganda doesn't lead us to a better future. But today I wanted to talk about emotional intelligence. There's a reason we have adult babies running around and ruining things, because they're babies. And I mean that quite literally in a way. They're stuck in some undeveloped part of themselves, like a child having a tantrum. Blaming, complaining, tantrums, greedy, selfish. So we hear about emotional intelligence, but education, let's start with the education system, because this is sort of where we have where I find fault anyway. That's not necessarily anybody's fault or intentional about it. It's the way our education system developed. So in many countries in the East, they developed meditation, mindfulness, etc. That's not part of our culture. Part of our culture from birth is told to want external things. The car, the house, the kids, the picket fence, the 401k, etc. That's where we're going to find happiness. And then it's reinforced by our consumer capitalist society of buy jeans, you'll feel good about yourself. Buy this car, you'll feel good about yourself. All these things that are associated with identity, right? If you buy this, own this, become this, then you'll be good. You'll be accepted. You'll be thriving. You'll be happy. The problem is these are very conditional ideas. Very conditional ideas. You might feel good for a few minutes buying that new car until you get the bill and have to pay for it. Then you're like, oh, maybe this isn't such a great idea. Obviously, we have a very serious debtor nation problem that is tied to consumerism, also the reduced middle class, etc. I'm not getting into that part today. I'm getting into the developmental emotional state of all of those. So, in school, I went to a very large school. It was really about intellectual regurgitation, learning facts and figures, numbers. And that's the intellect, right? I can process information. I can process facts and figures. I can regurgitate it back out on a test. But, so that's one aspect of us, right? The intellect. The intellect. However, the human that we all are, parts of us are getting left behind. And I don't mean that literally like there's a piece of you behind. I mean more figuratively in that parts of your development, my development, get left behind. Let me give you some examples. So emotional intelligence. So intelligence is about facts and figures, regurgitation, how you process, how you think, hopefully critical thinking, which doesn't seem to be all that common these days. But emotional intelligence is similar, being aware of emotions, being aware of beliefs, being mindful of these operating systems that we work from within. So what happens is to all of us, as children, we're developing and we're trusting our caregivers to give us whatever we need, nurturing, etc., safe environments to develop. Encouragement even, right? We're seeking encouragement from our caregivers. We're seeking love, safety from our caregivers so we can come forward with these parts of ourselves that are trying to develop. More often than not, our caregivers are incapable of it or even sometimes harming or thwarting development with their own issues. As the saying goes, hurt people hurt people. Meaning if I'm hurt, I'm going to be hurting you. I'm bringing my shame forward that will stymie or thwart your development. So, okay, let's say something happens when you're 4, 5, 6 years old, 3 years old, whatever it might be. Something very harmful, shaming, you get stuck there. In the Hindu religion, they call it, it's like a wound or a scar, samskara, that's what it's called, samskara. And it's very similar, right? It's where you get stuck. I'm sure we've all had parts of us that feel stuck. Why do I feel this way? Why am I behaving this way? And it's also often the wounded child, which turns into a victimhood or a belief system if it's not nurtured and addressed. So parents are, limited to what they offer, understand, know. Right? Maybe parents are becoming more mindful these last, few years. But when I was a child, I don't think they understood what nurturing really was about, or development. And so school, I went to a large school, 35 kids in a classroom, production line, almost a homogeneity going on, homogenization of the individual, of the human, that's now getting kind of compacted and packaged into a societal norm, obligation, condition. And that is, we're all supposed to adhere to the same ideas, want the same things, and now focus on the external. No one is developing the individual in school. No one is asking who you are. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? It's all learn the same thing. Problem with that is we're not all the same thing. We're not all the same people. If we were all the same, there would be one person times billions. We'd be automatons. We'd all want and think the same things, which is part of what's going on now in our culture with propaganda, divisiveness, left and right, and everyone is supposed to fall within those kind of parameters. But anyway, school develops the intellect, to a point the physical, but develops the intellect and leaves the emotional component behind. And this is why you're intellectually developing, but your emotions are not necessarily maturing in parallel congruence to the intellect. And so it's like a tire on a car. You have 4 tires on a car, right? Let's say you keep pumping one up, which is the intellect. Maybe the physical pumped up to a point, and the other ones are left alone because no one is developing the emotional component. Right? We're simply acting out. And often these emotional components are the belief system from which governs our lives. How we think, how we feel, how we filter ideas and information, how we project out that the world is going to be or not. Am I safe in the world? Is the world this or that? Who are these people? Should I take? Should I give? Should I take before they get theirs? Should I chop them down because I don't feel good about myself? Right? You see that a lot, right? Someone is maybe advancing and then other people come along and try to take him or her down, right? That's because they're hurting. They're resentful that someone is moving on. They want to stop them because it makes them feel uncomfortable because of their own shame and pain and lack of development in themselves. So if school, let's say you have the intellect, right? We're learning history, we're learning math, we're learning some science. Wonderful, right? This is shaping our worldview. But if you have the emotions of a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and you maintain those because they're stuck in time, even though the event is not happening, it's stuck in time, repeating itself, makes you feel terrible over the course of your development. Now you're reinforcing it. The superego, that chattering mind, that judging mind, will come and reinforce it. Will seek narratives that reinforce this belief. This other person's bad, you're great, you're terrible, whatever it is, it's going to reinforce these typically negatives, divisiveness, judgments, fears, right? Fears. Am I safe? Is one of the core emotions we have. Am I safe in this world to come forward? But if that superego or chattering mind says, no, you're not, and gives you 14 examples why you're not safe to go to the post office or go to the store or try out for that team or thing you want, it's because of those emotions that are stuck in the past in some event that happened that was too powerful for you to process at the time. That's what the subscara is considered. It's like a thorn or a wound that was too powerful to process. So it's very strange in our society. And years ago, it would be like, oh, he's crazy, or they need to be sent to an insane asylum because nobody understood how to help. But if someone's walking around with a broken leg, you can be like, oh my God, what's wrong with this person? He's got a broken leg. He's just walking around like a broken leg. Well, how many people do you know, and you can look in our politics right now, who are broken people? A lot of broken people. Blaming, shaming, screaming at others because they're in pain. They feel like they've been cheated or wronged or hurt in some sort of way. This perceived injustice, this indignation. And so if you have schooling, not to mention you have some places in this country that are trying to whitewash history because they don't want their kids to know it, because it could be painful. But this is how kids are very strong and resilient. They want to know because they want to improve. Kids come into the world with love, right? They've done studies in France and other places that they make kids of different backgrounds sit together for lunch and serve each other. Hard to sort of be a racist or hate-filled when you actually know someone and you see who they are. It's much easier to do that, to have the divisiveness, when you're hearing this narrative over and over again, this reinforcing narrative that someone is wrong or has done you wrong or is out to get you or is whatever, that you're superior. Right? You start believing that. But if you hear the opposite of, oh, this black kid, Asian kid, Middle Eastern kid, white kid, oh, we're just kids. I saw a meme or a political cartoon years ago. It was a black man pushing his child down the street in a stroller, and a white man coming the other direction in a stroller with his child. And the black man says, white guy. The white guy says, black guy. And the kids say, oh, another kid. Right? We learn these sort of primal instincts of other separation. So to get back emotional intelligence, right, we have to often override some of these primal instincts. So if you're struggling with something when you're 6, 7 years old and you don't know how to process, what do? You hit someone, you punch someone, you steal something because you're wanting, you feel like you're not getting for yourself, so you don't know how to process this intellectually. So if there were actual courses within school, meditation, tools on identifying behaviors, a safe space maybe, not a school therapist that kind of stigmatizes a child, but within classroom development to develop the emotional component of our lives, because that is another tire on the car that needs to be addressed. We're talking about the human being here. So if you only develop one part, then this kid becomes whatever, this person becomes whatever based upon that kind of foundational belief, emotion, experience. And now you have kids coming out of school, out of high school, out of college, wherever, emotionally stunted, and you have adult babies running amok in our society. Hence the greed, the misdirection, the manipulation, the harm. These are not developed individuals. These are not people on the forefront leading humanity forward. And that's what leaders need to be doing. Right? Progress. Humans are about progress. Evolving with ideas, with emotional awareness, and moving forward individually and as a society. And so think of it, if you had kids who were developing emotionally, meditation, mindfulness classes, working on emotional awareness, emotional intelligence, resiliency, development, because again, parents can only do so much. But if school was offering this, now we're developing more fully as a human being. So if people were actually encouraging you to reach your fullest, instead of saying, no, don't step outside of the group norm, basically, don't think outside of the box. But if they were actually encouraging you, and then by the time you got out of school, out of college, you were an actual adult, because now they taught you how to be an adult with not just intellect and emotion. They taught you about debt instead of encouraging you to get into debt. Right? The human, this is why we've been misled for many, many years. Many, many years. And we get trapped in it. We become enslaved to the systems we, not individually we created, but humans as a whole have created, and certain powers that be want to maintain you there, want to keep you stuck there, so they can reap rewards while you slave away, while we slave away. And as you see, people are working harder and harder, getting less and less. More and more is getting siphoned up to the top. This is not moving humanity forward. This is not moving the individuals forward. So like I said, if you actually have that developmental component, the emotional component, developing simultaneously with intellect, awareness, ethics, morals, integrity, the individual aspect, not everybody wants the exact same thing, but this is what we're taught since birth, is that external is going to give you what you need, but it's a lie. And people are learning that it's a lie. Right? Debt is not fun. It's nice to have things. It's nice to have toys. And of course, I love that too. But there can also be a cost to having a line, and that is what you own owns you too. So emotional intelligence is what governs our lives, not the intellect. Not the intellect. The emotional component governs our lives. It either broadens us or constricts us. And I'm going to leave you in just a minute. So you know the expression when people say you're playing small, you're playing small. Well, it's often you're playing small because of wounds, fears, doubts. Not because of that's your potential, but because that's the wall you've been hiding behind because of these pains and doubts and fears. Undeveloped, unable to come forward, believing all the pain, believing this narrative that the mind has been telling you, the mind keeping you safe, but it's not actually safe at all. It's keeping you damaged and in pain, keeping you stuck in time. So if the mind is playing it small, the heart, right, we should be listening to. The heart is where love is. The heart is where expansion is. The heart is where we blossom and grow. The heart has an electromagnetic field, something like 1,000 times that of the mind. So the truth is, when you are playing small, it is very true, because you are stuck in your mind and not in the expansive energies of the heart. Also, there's love. The heart is love, and not just love of others, but love of yourself. And so the brain will often separate you from that, divide you from that, like pulling up a plant from its roots. You ever feel like you're in your upper body and you can't kind of get into your lower body? Well, that's what meditation, groundedness, being present is. The past is not happening. The future is not happening. It's such a strange concept, but we have to work to be present. That is what can set us free. The past will just keep repeating and projecting into the future. As Dr. Joe Dispenza says, it's a familiar past that will lead to a predictable future. Of course, if you're taking the same ingredients, you're going to have the same stew. The change is in the present moment. This is the only true time that is existing now. And this is where emotional intelligence comes in. Why am I feeling that way? Let me kind of track that thought. Let me see where I'm going. Let me sit with this. Let me breathe into this moment. Let me see, do I want to feel this way? It feels kind of yucky. Is this really who I want to be? I want to treat people this way or treat myself this way? Or it's not helping me grow or move forward. It's just kind of keeping me in this stuck place. You ever play something or do something and you feel like you're not even there because you're in this other event in time that's not even happening? And who knows even how accurate your memory is, because memory is a little murky. But the belief system is very powerful. And so let's say if you brought a different belief, right? A lot of people have different beliefs. So if you had a different belief, like, oh no, I'm safe here. I can have joy and play this or do whatever. Embrace people instead of trying to tear them down or be angry at them or feel shame. So it's this emotional intelligence that we must keep working at and working on. That is what frees us. That is what aligns us with the higher self, with our potentials, with our joys, with the expressions we're trying to bring forward as human beings. They are not all the same. In fact, they are all different. And your unique stamp, your unique fingerprint on the world, it is needed more now than ever. That's where your love is. That's where my love is. That's where our best selves are waiting for us. Each piece we take back brings the light of consciousness, that much more light of consciousness forward. And that's what we're all here to do, is move forward. Thank you much, guys. Keep fighting the good fight. Be well.
Thank you for listening to the Douglas Robbins Show. To find out more about Douglas and his books, check out douglasrobbinsauthor.com.